Okay. Okay, call a meeting to order. Welcome everyone to our City Council meeting. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item on this evening's agenda concerns the minutes of the regular council meeting held on Monday, December 5th. Recommendation to approve.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Hodge. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is minutes of the Riverview Lands Advisory Committee meeting of Tuesday, October 11th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor Marsden. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Yes, I'm sorry, I may not have gotten that count right. Before I recall the vote again. Sorry, Councillor O'Neill, did you have something?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Zerillo. I was just one behind here. Item number 3 in the minutes talked about the manager of building permits providing an on-screen presentation entitled Riverview Lands Demolition and Construction Update, with slides as follows: Riverview site, demolition, construction, value, rendering, demolition. Anyway, that seemed to me to be information that the City Council had not received, and the General Manager of Planning and Development has subsequently sent to everyone on Council the slideshow that was shown to the committee. And it's just been on a tiny screen, and I haven't been able to look at it yet, but I just did want to get on the record that these sorts of things, I think Council would be very interested in seeing this, especially for a site as important as Riverview. This is an advisory committee that the Riverview Lands Advisory Committee is supposed to give advice to Council. If they were to give advice to Council about this, we might not know what they're talking about. So we need to see this first, or at least at the same time, or at least have it sometime soon after they see it, so we can be on the same page. And that's so I do thank the General Manager for sending us the PowerPoint presentation, and but would urge him and other department heads to ensure that these sorts of issues, these sorts of bits of information come to Council in a more timely fashion. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And the question is the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 3 is minutes of the Coquitlam River Watershed Roundtable Core Committee meeting held on Wednesday, November 16th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Zerillo. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 is the informal notes of the Cultural Services Advisory Committee meeting of Thursday, November 17th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Towner, second by Councillor Reid. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Zerillo.
Quick question about the committee name, Cultural Services. Historic. Someone brought it to my attention this week that it used to be called Culture Services, and we changed it to Arts and Culture, and now we've changed it back to Culture Services. I'm just going to take this opportunity to ask, is that true?
Mr. Clerk.
Yes, originally it was a name proposed by Council, and when the committee met for its very first time, they did suggest a change in name, and then a couple years, I think, perhaps, but sometime later, there was a move to bring the name back to what it is today. And in fact, there was a significant debate at the council table around the word culture versus cultural at that time. And this was the nomenclature that council ultimately decided.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that it was like this before. Thank you.
Arose by any other name. Councillor O'Neill.
Yep. And there was this most recent change was just last year, and that followed a discussion at the then Arts and Culture Advisory Committee that centered on aligning the name of the committee with the name of branch of Parks, Rec, and Culture that it was advising. And, well, not advising that branch, but having an alignment between the culture organization and the name of the Advisory Committee. So there it was. Thank you.
You felt that would clear things up for us.
Well, it did. This wasn't an arbitrary decision from council or from staff. That did this name change suggestion did come from the then Arts and Culture Advisory Committee and was then ratified by council or approved by council.
Perfect. And again, the question is the informal notes. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 5 is the minutes of the Sustainability and Environmental Advisory Committee meeting of Tuesday, November 29th. Recommendation to receive.
Recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, seconded by Councillor Wilson. This committee used to have a different name. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 6 was the item that was considered at this evening's public hearing. It pertains to Citywide Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4722 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4723 and the property at 1226 Johnson Street. Staff recommendations that Council give second and third readings to City of Coquitlam Citywide Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4722. Give second and third readings to City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4723.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Marsden. Councillor Asmundson.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I want to thank everybody that came out tonight. A lot of good comments and information put forward. I want to thank the public for that. I've taken a lot of time reading over this document, looking at the issues around it, and I'm going to support this moving forward. I know some people here will feel differently than that, but I think this has been zoned, this area, for many years for town housing. I think the addition of getting a seniors complex designated for, and getting a seniors complex in there. When I listed as staff about the traffic counts, the need and the traffic in there, I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think it is. I think it will be quite acceptable in the area, the traffic moving in and out of there. I also believe that the senior center building with the finish and the age of some of those people in it, that there will be, I think we have some traffic counts that we've been shown that they, I think, will be less than what's predicted in there by the age of the people going in there. So I don't see a lot of traffic volume. So I'm looking at more of the 76 townhousing units. I do believe, I work in transit, drive for transit, that people being provided a transit pass for 1 year introduces them to transit and the ease of taking transit, especially with the SkyTrain in this area. And I do believe that in this area here, just not with this development, but developments around it with the SkyTrain being here, you're going to see more people leaving their car at home and more people taking transit and a reduction in those areas with traffic on the road. So I think it is going to have an impact in reducing vehicle traffic from this development and developments in that area. As for the concern, and the next concern was about the trail, the east-west trail across the top. And some people are saying, well, just leave it as raw land, don't just leave it as a greenbelt buffer. I think that would be a mistake, because I do think that if we're talking about safety, if you're to leave that as bush and just a greenbelt area, you would have more people going in there because they could hide within the bush, they could create more vagrancies, people doing things in there. I believe if as said, that is opened up, a 10-meter wide area, a 3-meter pathway to 4-meter pathway in the ends. And then the other thing, I think, with Mr. Alueva, and it was mentioned that these fronts of these buildings, not the backs or the fronts, will be facing out onto the trail. It was putting more eyes. So I believe that this will make it even safer than what it is now, or what it would be by leaving as a strand of, I would say, it looks like more like alders and cottonwoods in there. And I think it would be less desirable for safety for those people in the proposed development and the people living along Nash there that back onto it. So I think it would make a difference. And, you know, I've lived in an area where, before I came on council, there was development of trails, and I had concerns about trails. Those concerns that I had years ago have not magnified themselves as the issues that we thought they would have been. And I think trails work quite well for people moving through the area, getting people off the roadways, and then through a trail network. And I think this trail network, while I know some people may have some concerns about it, I do believe that it is necessary to connect the areas on a greenway trailway network. And I do believe that putting the trail in will make it safer in that area in the future than making it more dangerous with crime. So for those two reasons, I think those two areas that I think what I heard tonight were the two major concerns from the public coming forward. And for that, I think that this development fits, and I will be supporting it moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill?
Yes, thank you very much. And as with Councillor Asmundson, I too am very impressed with the quality and a number of the submissions that we heard tonight, both pro and against this development moving forward. And as all of the objections started piling up, I was really starting to wonder about some of the answers, and I was some of the answers to the objections. I was quite taken with Mr. Joyce's expert opinion on the traffic. The more detailed look at the existing trails that are there already, provided by the photographs that the mayor showed, and those, I think, answered a lot of the questions and objections that were raised. The one objection that really nobody did deal with is one that I think was actually sort of unsupportable. There was essentially a desire by several people to turn what is private property that has long been designated for townhouses into a public park. Nobody, of course, talked about the fairness of that to the private property owner. Nobody talked about the cost that the city would have to incur if the city were to, let's say, purchase that and turn it into a park. And those are two very, very important issues. I know I can say from all the time I've spent on council that that I would never want to tell a private property owner who owns land that's long been designated for not just single-family homes but townhouse development that, no, you have to turn that into you have to keep that as green space for the enjoyment of the people who live just above you, whose land is built on what was forest as well, but they happen to build first before you. That's palpably unfair, and I think you have to admit that. The other part of that would be the city to buy that for how many tens of millions of dollars. I think that would be prohibitively expensive. We have a detailed master parks plan with all of our expenditures laid out for the coming many years, 25 years, yes. And how many hundreds of millions of dollars is that? So we've done a lot of planning in that area right now. And in terms of the green space, as we talked about earlier, the Walton Forest was quite the addition to the neighborhood, and as Councillor Reid well remembers, very controversial at the time. But a good decision was made by the council of the day, and the people in the whole area do enjoy the benefit of that now, and not just that area. I know other people go there. So to just sum up, I think that the traffic concerns were answered by Mr. Joyce. Yes, there's going to be an increase in traffic along Hudson, but I think Hudson can handle it. The trail, there's already a trail system in place there. This will improve the trail system. I do believe that concerns of crime actually will probably be, the likelihood of crime will likely be lessened by the fact that the environmental design to prevent that crime. The density we've always foreseen for the area, with a little bit extra density for the badly needed senior housing, rental housing to boot, and some of it actually being subsidized. So overall, I think I understand the concerns. I think the concerns were answered. They're certainly answered to my satisfaction. And I think it'll be a good development that will improve quality of life in Coquitlam. So I will be supporting second and third readings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marsden?
Thank you. Not to repeat the words of my colleagues, but I think this project is something that is needed.
You have to pull it up closer, or else they have to turn the volume up and you'll get feedback.
With my voice? It's always been way there. So I think when we take a look at this, there was some concerns with the trail. I think that's been addressed. I think our general manager Parks and Rec has heard the concerns. As if this is to move forward, I'm certain that the appropriate oversight will be given to ensure that we don't have the challenges that some people have expressed concern over. I think it's on the radar from day one, so let's make sure that we go down the right path with this. From a traffic perspective, I asked my questions relating to Johnson, Durant, Johnson, Guildford. I would strongly encourage Mr. Diozegi through your team to ensure that we take the measures necessary to improve those intersections where we can. The advanced turn signal onto Durant off of Johnson, I think, would certainly aid dramatically. I agree. I think getting rid of the right in, right out from the one development onto Johnson, I think is going to be a good move. I think it'll change the behavior of people trying to turn onto Durant and make that U-turn. So they'll go down Hudson and into the complex, as was clearly indicated and designed initially with the roundabout that's down there already, or the portion of the roundabout. So those concerns, which I think people expressed quite clearly, and I think we are able to mitigate them. And I think that's any time I look at any of these developments, I look and say, what does the neighborhood think? And how do we get to a situation of balancing what our community needs with what's going to fit in the neighborhood? And there's been a lot of talk about NIMBYism, where it's not in my backyard. Was at a presentation where he talked about YIMBYism. How do we get to yes in my backyard? And the one thing we heard, I think, from most speakers is that there is a desire to see supported seniors housing in our city. There's a need for it. There's some in that area. When you get down around Packard, there is some, but there isn't a plethora of it, and we have a need. So I think this addresses that need. So I think our job is to try and identify how we can mitigate the concerns in the neighborhood, and I believe the concerns that we've heard we can mitigate. The one piece on this that I look at, and on the report on page 6, it speaks about the parking. And Councillor Reid is the self-professed parking queen. But I do like to think that I keep an eye on it as well. I look at this one on the purpose-built seniors and requiring 67, proposing 64, and thinking that's a variance. When we look at the like properties in the area and the registered vehicles, by my estimation, the need will actually be 41 parking stalls. And so to build 64 and say it's a variance, I think it's probably 20 more than is going to be needed. And when we go back to mitigation, I would really encourage our planning department as we look at this and the layout as it gets to the development permit process to look and say, is there a way at some point with some of this parking to, if it's truly not needed for the residents, that it could be made available to other residents in the area, the townhouses that are there or the ones that are being proposed. And that would address it and perhaps take care of the concerns about on-street parking. You could provide them parking within a structure. There may be a cost associated with it, revenue stream for the housing association, not a bad thing, and moves traffic or parking off the street into a more secured area. So I think this one ticks so many boxes of what we need in our community. We need townhomes. There just is not a supply. The demand is there. We need seniors housing. We need supported, subsidized senior housing. This just ticks enough boxes that it is going to get my full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I really want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I know it's unfortunate we usually get the most engagement when people are opposed to something, but I really appreciate you coming out and telling us how you felt about the project. And I hope through this it's helped you understand a bit more why I think most of us will support it. I'm really sorry that it's going to affect your backyard and the traffic around your house, but we're tasked with needing to look at the big picture for the city, doing what's right for the whole city. And we have to put our faith and our belief in our staff and in the experts. And you expressed a lot of concerns about traffic, and I hope that you believe what our staff and what the experts have said about the traffic. And you had concerns about the trail, and I hope, again, you have some faith in what our staff has said about the security of those trails. You know, the roads were built to handle this kind of capacity, and it's one thing to, you know, become really used to your road being a certain way and having a certain amount of traffic, and nobody wants more traffic. Nobody wants more cars parking on their street. Nobody wants trees cut down, you know, in their green belt. But we're tasked with accommodating more and more people moving to our city every year. And over the next 20 years, 25 years, we're going to have 40,000 people a year moving into Metro Vancouver. And somehow we've all got to accommodate that growth. And the way we do that is by higher density on transit corridors or near SkyTrain stations. And this is, unfortunately, for the people on Durant, this is the perfect spot for more density. And we have a responsibility to try to accommodate that growth. As been mentioned as well already, we have a desperate need for more affordable housing, and this is going to be a huge boost for seniors in our community, an area that's under a population that's underserved when it comes to housing, and I think this is just a great opportunity for them. We heard a lot of opposition from people that lived on the south side of Durant mainly. We didn't hear any opposition tonight from people in the townhouse development, any of the townhouse developments around that area. We heard very few people opposed on the north side of Nash, and few people from outside of Nash. And so definitely it's a development that's going to affect primarily the people on the south side of Nash, and that's who we mainly heard from. But we also got all kinds of letters and emails from people supporting this project. And people from all parts of the city, people from outside of the city who recognize the need for this kind of development. So I really hope you understand better tonight, you know, the constraints that we have to work with, the vision that we have to work with, and you know, can accept the decision that we're going to have to make tonight. It's not easy. We hate having to hear from people who are completely opposed to something that we know is in the long run the best thing for the city, but that's what our job is. So thank you for coming out.
Thank you. Councillor Towner.
Thank you. I also want to thank everyone who came out tonight and gave us input, and these are all the email submissions that we received, so I really appreciate all of the input we got from the public. I don't want to repeat a lot of what, actually almost everything I have here, Councillor Wilson already touched on, but a few people addressed their concerns over density, and I empathize. But whether we like it or not, as Councillor Wilson said, 35 to 40,000 people are coming into our region per year, and Coquitlam has to provide their fair share of housing for all these new residents coming in. And just our city is going to have an increase in population of about 100,000 between now and 2041. So we need to densify. We absolutely have to. I've also been to different luncheons and heard speakers that say a single family home is only in reach now for about 5% of the Canadian population. So townhouses and apartments, that is the route to go given the market situation that we have. It's not only about economics. One speaker talked tonight about it being economics for the developer, but it's economics on the other end. If families can't afford single-family homes, then townhouses are a wonderful alternative. It keeps families in our city, schools in our kids, people in our parks, and not everybody wants to raise their kids in an apartment. So a townhouse is a really good option for that. So there's economics, obviously, but economics to provide more affordable options than the single-family house. I appreciate very much that crime and challenges during a snowfall are concerns, but in my opinion, those aren't concerns that I would take into consideration in order to not support a development such as this. I also heard quite a few people describe the neighborhood as peaceful. I think that's wonderful. It's a wonderful part of our city, and quite a few people use that term. And I have all the faith in the world that neighborhood will still be peaceful. I think there'll be lots of benefits, and yes, there will be a little bit more traffic, but I do believe in 5 years from now, that neighborhood will still be described as peaceful. Another thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if anybody's talked about this, but a few people spoke about the transit pass being provided for a year. I think that's a really generous offer to the residents. And I've heard time and time again, I mean, maybe in smaller things, they say it only takes 20 days to make or break a habit. Well, if people get used to using free transit and they realize it's so much less stressful, they can read a book, they're saving money on gas and wear and tear in their car. When the year is up and they don't get their pass paid for anymore, it's been shown time and time again that people will stick with that habit. They will stick with that routine. And that will result in fewer cars on our streets and less congestion and more people using transit. So I just want to say that, you know, a well-designed, appropriate located rental complex, townhouse complex, isn't a blight on a community in any way, shape, or form. And to many, as we saw in some of our emails and heard tonight, it's a savior, something like this. And, you know, seniors were our pioneers. Their tax dollars paid for the roads and the services in that area now. And I haven't heard anything tonight where I don't want to support more housing for our seniors. I think it's an amazing location. It's close to the mall, shops and services, our beloved town center park, and our rapid transit. We need rental. We need seniors housing. We need townhouses for families in our city. And someone alluded to 14 subsidized units as not being enough. Okay, that's not a huge number, but if we decline the opportunity to build a proposal because it isn't enough, then we would never get anything done. We have to make changes in our housing inventory in incremental steps. So I fully support this project. And like Councillor Wilson said, we empathize on those of you that are going to have changes in your neighborhood. None of us like change. We get used to what we get used to, but I really do think that this will be a really good development for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, I too want to thank everybody who came out tonight. And this is a really a hard issue for residents, particularly long-time residents. And I understand the concerns of the residents who live on Nash. I live in a part of the city where for many years my house had a green belt behind it and beside it, and I went through the trees coming down and the change in my neighborhood. So I completely understand the concerns that the residents have. They're used to having that bush and an area behind them. I was interested in the number of people that commented on the trail, and I think that this is something that we're going to have to work on. It's interesting to note that, you know, this is city property, and the trail really could have been built at any time because we do have a plan to create a trail network through the city and to have that interconnectivity. And we just spoke about it earlier today in another neighborhood about wanting to create these connections. So I think that we have to make sure that we do that in a way that we don't bring undesirables into the neighborhood or have those elements there, and it may be done with opening up areas and creating sight lines. And I think that can be done. And in many respects, I see that, although initiated by this project, a separate issue, and I think that needs to be dealt with. You know, Councillor Wilson alluded to and spoke to the concerns and the challenges that we have as city councillors, and you know, we recognize that we have to provide a good environment for today's residents and and where they live today, and recognize that though they have a lifestyle they've become accustomed to, and at the same time we're also tasked with long-term planning, and that's probably the most difficult part, is we're making decisions for people who don't even live here today, but that's one of our jobs, and that sometimes isn't easy because it's today's residents that come out, generally often, you know, not in favor of a change, but we have to make those changes and move this city forward, and that's not an easy task. But I spent a lot of time reading through the material, reading the comments. I was quite interested in the traffic. Interestingly, today parking, although came up, I think that's not going to be the major concern here. I think it is going to be the increased traffic on Hudson and the entry point from Durant onto Johnson. And I think that maybe the time has come that we do have to look at some changes in the signalization there to improve it for not only the new residents, but for the residents that live there today and who may be impacted by this. I do think the removal of the right in, right out lane is a benefit. It was designed to be a temporary measure with the idea that someday that Hudson would go through. And this is what a previous council and previous planners had envisioned. It probably took longer to get there than they thought, but we now have that opportunity to complete that road, to complete Hudson, and to remove that right in, right out. And I think that's going to be, in the end, a benefit and make it safer and certainly eliminate the people having to make that U-turn up on Durant. So I think there are some positive things here, including more rental for our seniors, and for that reason, I'm looking at the positive aspects of this. Listening to the concerns of today's residents, and in the end, I'm going to make my decision to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will, I guess, make it unanimous. Thank you all for coming. Democracy only works when people get engaged and they offer opinions, and then we're left with the task of what to do next. I must say that there's been a good amount of really helpful input here tonight. I must also say, though, that I was actually a bit disappointed in some of the comments that we received, primarily written comments, that were a little bit on the NIMBY side. There was one comment, for example, that said if you put in a senior housing project, there'll be more ambulances that come by and they'll keep us awake. As was said here tonight, the seniors in our community, Finnish and from any other culture, they've really contributed enormously to our society, and we owe them a debt. And I'm most pleased to see proposals of housing for seniors. That's not to say that we'll be approving all of them, or we'll be supporting them, or that staff would recommend them. Staff have recommended our support of this one, and I'm inclined to accept their recommendation. There were some elements raised tonight. For example, one of the bigger ones was traffic. Durant would face significant traffic, as would a couple of the side streets. And we do have to acknowledge, though, that Durant was originally planned for a school. In the Walton Forest, there would be a school and additional housing there. Now, there isn't any of that, and a school is about the highest generator of traffic morning and afternoon. There are a few comparators to a school as far as generating traffic. And that's gone. So we know now that, no question, that Hudson is a very quiet street. It won't be a very quiet street. It'll simply be a quiet street after this. I suspect that's a reality of any development. Crime, it's one of the challenges of those neighborhood connectors is that we have one that goes behind my house, and it does create, or it is a cause of occasional, say once or twice a year, something that goes on related to that, but there's similar things that go on related to the sidewalk out front. We don't contemplate those things, though, because it's in front and everyone has a sidewalk in front. So I really believe that it can be an asset to have this kind of trail through that space. I also believe that you look at the design and I see that the townhouses really do tend to front onto that linear park, and I think that's good design. I think it will help create additional safety and SEPTED. The seniors housing absolutely needed, but the townhouses are absolutely needed as well. And our community right now has, I believe, a zero vacancy, like absolutely no inventory of townhouses. And we hear from so many families that can no longer afford the single-family home, and they're looking for the 3-bedroom ground-oriented sort of housing that isn't available. And so I look to our community to find, as Councillor Wilson, for example, said, we need the density. We need to be able to find out how to sustainably support a larger population, because the people are coming here. It's not that we're bringing them here, it's that they're coming, and we have to respond in terms of housing. This is land that was always going to be developed. Those that want it to remain in green space bought their homes undoubtedly when the plan said it would be developed. And so we have to acknowledge that. It's not buy your home next to green space and then demand that the green space not be developed, even though that's in the plan. So we, and there was even a suggestion in one of the written that we should keep all the new buildings to 2-story. That suggestion was written by someone who lives in a 3-story house. So I get a bit disappointed on the NIMBY side, but almost all of the comments tonight were respectful and really helped, I think, guide some of the discussion that we're going to have as we get to development permit, if this goes through at third reading tonight. I'll be supporting it, and I see Councillor Zarillo.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that the mayor mentioned that he was disappointed in comments, and I just wanted to say for the record that I am not. Of course, if they were threatening or criminal in nature, then that's a problem. But I was just very pleased and encouraged to see the amount of people that came out tonight. A lot of times we go through a public hearing and we don't see very many people come. So I just wanted to distinguish myself from Mayor Stewart in that way, that I'm totally fine with comments as long as they're not threatening or criminal. And then I also wanted to just take this opportunity then to mention that when we, as a city, if this goes through, do the budget and look at the trail maintenance plan and operational costs for that trail, that we keep in mind that there'll be a lot of dogs and I'm sure a lot of smoking. It would be great to do some proactive creating good habits at the beginning by having more maintenance and more bylaw initiatives going through there at the beginning. Those are my comments.
Seeing no others, the motion is second and third reading. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Next item, item 7, pertains to fourth and final reading of the City of Coquitlam 2017 5-year financial plan and capital program bylaws.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Marsden. All in favor? Opposed? Oops, Councillor Asmussen.
Thank you very much. Just one comment through to staff is that a year ago I made a request and council supported it. There was 4 requests for a 1% tax increase for parks, for engineering, for our component replacement and strategic initiatives, and for facilities. Now, Parks has put together a report on their facility amenities that require, and that's going to be coming back to council in the future, a completed report. But I haven't seen engineering's report in regards to what is the level of need within the future roads budget, where we're at. I know about 4 years ago, before Mr. Jozeki came over, Mr. Suzak at that time recommended that we were about $1 million or so short, but he had estimated in road maintenance. And I'd also like to know, I know we made some good things in the budget here moving forward for some funding for component replacement, but I think we need to have some better ideas moving forward. So I would like to have, prior to next year's budget, to have by June those reports moving to council, if council will also, I don't know if I need a seconder to that, Mayor?
Can't make that motion here.
Okay.
In fact, right now I'm going to pull back a little bit I believe Mr. Clerk would be more comfortable. First of all, we all know, I think, that we're voting on a series of 8, but I think Mr. Clerk would be more comfortable if you could all go out and get a coffee while he reads the 8.
Just showing off.
Not sure we need to read all 8, it's just I just mentioned one and it was moved. But I have noted that Councillor Reid has moved fourth and final reading to the 5-year financial plan bylaw, as well as the series of bylaws which support the 2017 capital program. And those are noted before you. And finally, fourth and final reading to see Coquitlam 2017 DCC amendment bylaw number 4705. So just a series of bylaws that together encapsulate the financial plan.
Indeed, those were moved by Councillor Reid and seconded by Councillor Marsden. Councillor Asmundson, do you have any further comment?
Can I comment? Continue on my
Yes,
comment?
you can. You can't move an amendment to those, no. I'll let you move a subsequent motion if you want.
Yeah, I'll move a subsequent motion. Can I do that at what point after the?
Subsequently. So as soon as we're finished the disposing of these, actually passing them or otherwise, then I will
Okay.
let you move a subsequent motion. Any further comments? No. Okay, and the motion is fourth and final to a series of 8 bylaws. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Councillor Asmundson.
And just to my comments previously, I'd asked last year for these reports to be coming. There was also about a facility report on the level of needs and facilities. So I think it's important for council to know moving forward what the gaps are in our needs and when we put our budget together. So I would hope that by June this year that those reports would be available to council in the preparation of the 2018 budget. And I also have some concerns right now through Mr. Diazek about the roads. Presently, with the snow and freezing, I've noticed on the roads that in some areas where I've been driving, since I drive a lot on these roads, that there's a breaking up of some of the roads with potholes due to the freezing and heaving and the increased damage to our roads on that. So do I need a seconder for that request?
That was a motion?
Yes. No, the motion is strictly that from last year. It can be direction to staff.
It could be direction to staff. If you complete your wording,
I would like to have those reports that were requested last year on the gaps in these areas that were requested by staff brought forward by June this year for the 2018 budget. We can put direction.
I see nodding from staff. I'm just wondering if staff would prefer a motion, or I don't see any objection from council related to the request, although there may be. Any objection?
Either way works for us, either direction or a motion, either way works.
Mr. Steblin, thank you. Councillor Reid?
Something sprung on this at this time at 11 o'clock at night over a 10-hour day is, maybe it's something we want to talk about a little more. I have no objection to you getting the information, but I'm not, I don't want to start a big discussion tonight.
Okay, I'm going to rule that it would require a notice.
Well, I won't be here for the next meeting.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be in the next meeting anyway. So I suspect, though, that staff are comfortable with the request, and they will do everything they can to meet it. Is that good enough for you?
Well, that's good enough because I made this request and council supported it last year. These reports have not come forward for the 2017 budget. And so all I'm asking is those reports, I got support last year at budget for staff to bring forward those actions that they be brought forward for the 2018 budget.
Okay. I think staff understand the request, and I suspect that if there turns out to be any issue with that, it'll come to us in the first week of January, and we'll be able to address it then. Sound good?
Second week of January.
The first meeting of January. Okay. In the second week of January.
Second meeting of January.
Is 11. Okay. All comfortable with that? Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 8 pertains to fourth and final reading of City of Coquitlam 2017 Fees and Charges Bylaw, As the report notes, there's one slight amendment to Schedule B related to the Board of Variance fee, and as a result, the staff recommendations that Council approve Schedule B to the 2017 Fees and Charges Bylaw 4676 as amended, and fourth and final reading to the 2017 Fees and Charges Bylaw 46 as amended. Approve Schedule B as it is before you now, and fourth and final reading to the Fees and Charges Bylaw as amended.
Okay, he's finished speaking now. Moved by Councillor Rasmussen and seconded by Councillor Zerillo.
We thought he'd finished.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Confused myself in my own report. A little too familiar with it, I suppose. Item 9 is fourth and final reading of the 2017 Water, Sewer, Drainage, and Solid Waste Rate Amendments. Staff recommendations, the Council give fourth and final reading to Water Distribution Amending Bylaw number 4731. Fourth and final reading to Sewer and Drainage Amending Bylaw 4732, and fourth and final reading to Solid Waste Management Amending Bylaw number 4733.
Moved by Councillor Towner, second by Councillor Reid. Councillor Hodge. Separation, we'll separate this. Which one do you want separate?
One, please.
Okay, so we'll do 1 and then we'll do 2, 3. On 1, any discussion? Councillor Hodge.
I'm ready to vote.
All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Hodge, O'Neill, and Zerillo are opposed. That motion carries. Councillor, on 2 and 3, all in favor? Opposed? Well, carries unanimously.
Item 10 is development permit authorization for a proposed 5 street-oriented village homes at 1392 Trafalgar Street. Staff recommendations that Council approve the signing and sealing of the DP for 1392 Trafalgar Street, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute it.
It was.
Seconded by Councillor Marsden and then moved by Councillor Asmundson. Councillor Hodge.
On this one, and that's to do with the crawl space here and the need for storage. And we constantly hear up on Burke about the people using garages for storage, and I'm not concerned about the garages, but I think we have an opportunity here because these ones. This development does have a crawl space. And I note that I think the report says that the crawl space is 48 inches high. Is that correct in that one? So I'm just wondering why we don't go a bit taller in that. I was looking at my crawl space at home and thinking, for moving and storing things in there, we don't want it high enough that it would ever be usable space, but even going at 4'6" allows you to carry things in and out of a storage area and would probably increase the use. And I'm just wondering why we don't do that.
Mr. Fuji, on the height of a crawl space.
Through the chair to Councillor Hodge, I don't know in this specific one. This was the design suggested by the applicant, but there may be some issues related to if you go too high, it begins to affect the overall height of the building and things of that sort of thing.
Okay, so this one might be a site-specific issue as opposed to a bylaw that doesn't permit it?
There's nothing specifically in a zoning bylaw that doesn't prohibit it. There may be some building code, other related technical issues, which unfortunately I'm not sort of aware of offhand. But I can research that if need be.
For future, I had heard that in some cases, if it hits a certain height, then it becomes calculated as part of the FAR. And I would like to, as we move forward, look at increasing the heights of crawl spaces for storage without penalizing developers. I'll just make that comment, and as a general comment about crawl spaces and storage.
And the only caveat I would have on that is that there be a maximum distance between the underside of the floor joists and the drain tile on the exterior of the building, so that, because we all know of the issue of breaking up the slab and digging down another 3 feet. If the drain tile is too low, then it becomes a basement anyway, and we've circumvented it. So particularly on those units where we're trying to prevent something like a secondary suite. I don't think that's an issue here because she's made so many changes to the living space in those areas that it precludes any use other than rec rooms. So, but thank you for raising that. Anybody else on this? Seeing none. Question is a development permit. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 11 is zoning amendment bylaw 4686.
That wasn't hard.
Item 11 is zoning amendment bylaw number 4686, which pertains to the property at 1414 Haversley Avenue. Staff recommendation is that council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4686. The bylaw number 4686 be referred to public hearing. And that council instructs staff to complete the following item prior to council's consideration of fourth reading, should council ultimately grant second and third readings to the bylaw. And this is registration of a restrictive covenant for building design.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, second by Councillor Asmundson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 12 is a preliminary report for Hertiage Revitalization Agreement at 907 Walls Avenue in order to develop a 3-lot subdivision, restore the Ellsbury Monday House, and enact Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4727 and Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4728. Staff recommendations that council give first reading to City of Coquitlam Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw 4727. First reading to City of Coquitlam Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4728. Bylaws number 4727 and 4728 be referred to public hearing. And that staff be instructed to complete, if council ultimately grants second and third readings, submission of a subdivision application to the satisfaction of the approving officer.
Okay. Moved by Councillor, you second. Moved by Councillor O'Neill and firmly, and seconded by Councillor Hodge. Councillor Asmundson.
I like this project. I think it's good. I'm tired, so I just want to get some clarification. So on the, way past my bedtime. So we've got on the Heritage House, we have a 2-car garage with a carriage house and a 3rd bedroom below. Is there going to be a covenant not allowed to make sure there's no suite allowed within the Heritage home?
Mr. Fuji.
Can I, sorry, through the chair to Councillor Asmundson, I had a slight hearing issue there. What was the specific question again, please?
We got a carriage house at the back here, underneath, on top of the carport with a 3rd bedroom, which is a unique design by the stairs. But the Heritage House itself, so we're only going to have basically that's the suite for this lot, and so that. A lot of these concerns I have from time to time is on the main house, people try to put in an extra suite. So do we put a covenant on the property to restrict, and does the design restrict the ability of the basement or parts of this house from being suitable on the lower floor?
Through the chair to Councillor Atkinson, the specific proposal, the Heritage Revitalization Agreement wouldn't provide for a secondary suite as a permitted use, but we could put language within the document which clarifies that a secondary suite is specifically prohibited as well, just to for belt and suspenders approach.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'll support this going forward to public hearing.
Thank you. Councillor Marsden. Thank you. No, sorry, Councillor Hodge.
Okay, thank you. I am certainly an interesting proposal and project, so I'll certainly support it going forward to public hearing. I do have 2 questions on it, though. Looking at this, these are going to be 3 separate lots, and a lot of the ones that we've done in the past, I think, are a common lot. And I'm just wondering our ability to impose what's, I guess, essentially design guidelines on the second 2 lots, given that they will be free of the original lot and fee simple. I'm just wondering, how does that work? Do we place a covenant on the design guidelines on the lot at the time of subdividing? Or I'm just wondering what would happen if the developer were to sell the 2 lots after subdividing? How do we ensure that the design guidelines are met?
Through the chair to Councillor Hodge, through the agreement, we'll ensure that the specific design requirements are registered on the not only with the house, the lot where the excuse me, where the Heritage House is going to go, but on the other two lots. So we'll ensure that the appropriate agreements are put in place so that we don't end up a situation where you get a regular house on the new two proposed lots.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is, looking at the picture of the Heritage House, and recognizing that at this particular house we don't have, or the developer wasn't able to acquire old pictures of the house, so they're trying to sort of return this to what it may have looked like based on pictures or a building description that's included in the conservation plan, which is actually a catalog picture of typical of that era. And it actually looks very close, but it's in my view, the restoration proposal doesn't look as heritage as the catalog. And I'm just wondering, as the catalog picture, I'm just wondering if this house is being raised up, and it's hard to tell from this picture because it's a flat view of it, if that's actually a porch or if the windows come right up to the front of the house on the middle floor. I'm just sort of, the catalog picture on page 9 is sort of a three-dimensional view, and I'm looking at sort of the flat face on Heritage view, and I'm just wondering if you can sort of explain the difference of how that looks in relation to the other picture.
Mr. Fuji.
Give us a second here while I look in the details.
Okay. And I'm fine if we don't have that information now, bringing it at the public hearing. As I said, the one on page 9 of the report, you can clearly see a porch with the door and everything set back. Obviously, it doesn't have the windows because the basement's below ground. So there are a few changes to this from the catalog picture.
Through the chair to Councillor Hodge, we'll ensure that in the public hearing brief that we capture all of those questions and answers.
Great.
Yeah.
That's the best time for it. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Marsden.
Thank you. And just for information for public hearing, I will support this going forward as first reading right now. If you can give some information with regards to HRAs with detached homes that we've done in the past and the average lot sizes. These ones are in that 3,500 square feet. So I'm curious how this compares to other similar HRAs with detached homes components. A lot of the ones I've seen to this point have had townhome components. So you could have that. That would be great. And as well, just the comparison is what that would be, how it compares to the average 10-meter lots that we're doing in the Meardville area now. Just the overall lot sizes. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge noted that there were no original photographs of the home available, but I noted to my great delight that a marriage certificate was found between Mr. Alsbury and Miss Monday, and it was one of the little treasures that you find when you're reading through these things. And even better yet, and I have to share this because we are close to Christmas, of course, the caption under the marriage certificate noted that this James and Cora's marriage certificate signatures. This is page 5 of the Heritage report. They were wed on December 20th, 1918, just after the armistice and just before Christmas. So likely a very happy event. That was it. I love that. Made my day when I read that. Yes, likely extremely happy. And lovely to see that little tidbit in there. Actually, there's been so many of these where there's been fascinating bits of history. I hope that, I know these come to us one at a time or sometimes in bunches of two, but hope all of these plans are kept together in one big book in Craig's and Councillor Hodge's house, because that'd be really great to see all of these plans all together at one time. So that it's a real great boon to historians and to trivia lovers like me. Thank you.
in addition to that, yeah, the City Archives actually is has a link to a lot of the heritage revitalization work. Research is done there. They've been one of the active users since the Archives program has started up. And Emily takes great pleasure when these things come forward. And I think through that process, we've developed a relationship with the authors or the analysts who put together those things, and look forward to those documents or information finding their way into the archives.
Well, that's a very happy bit of news for us then. Thank you.
Well, these are wonderful insights, and they're even more wonderful if they occur earlier in the evening. Any further discussion? The question is an HRA on walls. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 13 is a preliminary report for Heritage Revitalization Agreement at 225 Begin Street to develop one single-family home, restore the Marcellin residence, and enact Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4643 and Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4718. Staff recommendations that Council give first reading to City of Coquitlam Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw 4643. First reading to City of Coquitlam Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4718. The bylaws 4643 and 4718 be referred to public hearing, and that staff be instructed to complete the following item should Council ultimately grant second and third readings to the bylaw. Submissions of a subdivision application to the satisfaction of the approving officer.
Moved by Councillor Hodge and seconded by several people. We'll go with Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Hodge.
Question on this one. Looking at the picture of the house, and I know the house well, and it's in the historic area of Laval Square. This house, is this one on the heritage inventory list? I just wondered. It's not one of the top in the first section, but I'm not sure if it's in the list. Maybe we could get that for the public hearing if we don't have that answer, or I can probably look it up. It just dawned on me now. I don't remember seeing this one on the list.
It's through the chair to Councillor Hodge. It's on our the Southwest Heritage Inventory, which was conducted back in 2008. So that inventory sort of notes homes which may have some heritage significance or along that lines, and then through the sort of development applications, we work with the applicants to get statements of significance prepared by a heritage professional to sort of confirm, the nature of the heritage and so on and so forth. So this particular one, through the process, we've identified that there is some heritage character and merit, and so consequently, we're going through this HRA process to try to renovate, rehabilitate, retain the home.
Well, certainly it has history of place, and again, another interesting read from a history standpoint. Looking at the picture and the development, this house is currently one story with a basement, but looking at the proposal, it looks like there's going to be windows in what I would say is currently the attic. So is this plan to turn this from a two-story into a three-story, or what is the... wasn't clear on that, if we're actually gaining a story here, or are we raising the house at all?
Through the chair to Councillor Hodge, I'm just flipping through the drawings, but my recollection is, yes, there's going to be a bit of a raising of the existing home.
Okay. I'll study the drawings more before the public hearing.
And we'll, excuse me, and we'll clarify through the public hearing brief once again as well.
I don't know if it's just going to be small rooms tucked in the attic, or if we're doing a lift. I certainly, have in the past supported the HRAs, but one of the things that does concern me is that whenever we go into these, just how much of the original heritage is being kept and how much needs to be modified, obviously, to meet today's lifestyle. So that I'd like some more information on that at the public hearing as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm always fascinated by the fact that the person that built this house undoubtedly never expected that at some point we'd be cherishing it as much as this. It certainly is a wonderful opportunity to cherish this. Any further discussion? Oh, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 14 pertains to the 2016 Fall Spirit of
Thank you.
Coquitlam grants. Staff recommendations that council endorse the recommended disbursements in the Spirit of Coquitlam grant program totaling $284,931 outlined in the report before you, and endorse amendments to the updated Spirit grant eligibility criteria and disbursement guidelines, which is attachment 1 to that report for spring 2017 intake.
Moved by Councillor Towner, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. And quite often we have some of the community groups that have received the grants. They attend council, and we want to thank those that were able to stay until now. And we thank all of you for the work that you do in our community. Thank you. And the question is disbursements. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 15 pertains to the citizen appointments to the 2017 advisory and statutory committees. Staff recommendations that council approve the 2017 citizen appointments to the advisory and statutory committees as listed in attachment 1 to the report before you, and 2, that council approve the revised terms of reference for the Culture Services Advisory Committee, the Sports Advisory Committee, and the Universal Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Marsden. Yeah. All in favor? Oh, Councillor Cirillo. Councillor Cirillo.
Can I just say that that was Mr. Leung that stayed almost to the very end?
Yes.
He was on one of our committees, and he missed it by like this much.
Yeah.
But I don't blame him for wanting to go home to sleep.
I would like to, too.
Okay. And why don't we vote on this? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. And the motion is, actually no. Mr. Diozegi, are you prepared at this point?
Yes, Your Worship, I prepared a brief, takes about 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. We will be here for the first couple of minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship. A quick update on the city's snow and ice control efforts. As you know, over the weekend we received about 30 to 40 centimeters of snow in some parts of the city. We have been working 24/7 around the clock. We have 12-hour shifts. It's not only the drivers, but also the supervisors, loader operators at the works yard, as well as the garage. As to the control center, between Friday night and Monday morning, we received approximately 250 after-hour calls related to snow and ice control. And today, to about 7 p.m., we received well over 500 calls in the engineering department also related to the same. Currently, as we speak, we have approximately 10 snowplows on the road, obviously doing snow removal and salting to mitigate hazardous driving conditions. Earlier today and earlier this evening, we had 3 backhoes in the Westwood Plateau area cleaning cul-de-sacs, which are generally considered to be lower priority, but nevertheless, the necessity was there. We had the resources, so we try to do the best what we can. Daily, we are using about 250 tons of salt at a cost of approximately $25,000. That's only the cost of the salt. Over and above comes obviously the cost of the equipment, the drivers, and then the support in the works yard, including supervision, garage, etc. As you know, our snow clearing priorities are set for 1, which is generally speaking arterials, collectors, and bus routes. Priority 2 are steep grades, schools, and senior homes. And priority rest is pretty well the rest, including some priority lanes, those which front arterial roads or have no other accesses, and the local roads are prioritized based upon grades. I'd like to mention, both for council but particularly for the general public, that we have our priority maps posted on our website, so it's relatively easy to find and everybody can take a look at it. It's in the winter-wise section of our city website. For the general public, I would recommend to consider using public transit to reduce congestion on slippery roads. And I'd like to mention that we have just opened up a new park and ride lot at the southeast quadrant of Pine Tree and Guilford, just across from us. This parking lot accommodates 110 cars, and the parking fee for the entire day, which from 8 a.m. through 6 p.m. is only $3.75 a day. So it's relatively inexpensive, and I think we should take advantage of the newly opened Evergreen line. For those who need to use their cars, please make sure that you have snow-rated tires with good tread when driving. One other note here, we know clearing sidewalks is a substantial effort, but to improve pedestrian safety, our boulevard maintenance bylaw requires property owners to clear the sidewalks within 10 hours of cessation of snowfall events. Now about the forecast. It calls for clear but very cold weather for the next few days, which will be followed by warmer temperatures that may result in more snow and or flooding risk as catch basins will get plugged. So for our residents, please think about nearby catch basins, and a bit of help would go a long way to improve all travelers' safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I have one more announcement, and I wish we could have done this earlier, but this is the typical time we make these announcements. We have, it's with deep regret that we express our condolences to the family of Reverend John Davies, who passed away on November 24th. Reverend Davies was a longtime Coquitlam resident and over 60 years as a minister of religion, education, and counseling, and in various roles, both in church but also in affordable housing. He was past director and administrator of the Blue Mountain Seniors Housing Society, Friendship Baptist Housing Association, Affordable Housing Advisory Association, and president of Abbeyfield Houses, which is a registered housing provider to seniors. He also served as chaplain to City Council, as well as Padre for Coquitlam branch of the Royal Canadian Legion, 263, social director of the Friendship Senior Housing Association, 1988 Citizen of the Year, and Coquitlam, Port Moody, and Port Coquitlam, 1992 awarded the 125th anniversary of Confederation Commemorative Medal for contributions to the community, and he was recognized in this community as not just an amazing person, but also with the freedom of the city. He was one of our freedom recipients, and we'll miss him. He was he contributed greatly. He smiled enormously and was gentle to everyone he met. And it is with deep regret that we acknowledge his passing. It was a quiet, private ceremony with his family, apparently, and there will be a more public ceremony in January, on January 7th, Saturday, January 7th, 2 p.m. at Westwood Alliance Church. Our condolences on behalf of all of Council and the City of Coquitlam, our condolences to the Davies family. Motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Hodge. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.